I want you to take a moment and picture a scenario with me. Imagine that you're only a few weeks into your missionary service and you're awoken in the middle of the night by an attacker standing over you and your companion holding a knife, and you're about to quite literally fight for your life. That scene isn't from a fictional Hollywood horror movie, but it was a reality for Lauren Willardson and her companion. And we have the privilege of having her in the studio with us today to share with us all of the crazy details and aftermath of that story. It's an incredible story of faith, perseverance, and triumph. I'm excited for you to hear it. My name is Jackson Wayne Paul, and welcome to Latter Daily Saints.
What power shall stay the heavens from pouring down knowledge from heaven upon the heads of the Latter-day Saints?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Latter Daily Saints. And for our first-time viewers, I'm so excited for what you're about to hear. And hopefully you stick around, because essentially what this is trying to be, this show is a daily news and pop culture commentary show made by Latter-day Saints, intended for a Latter-day Saint audience. But we do have a growing number of members of other faiths that are watching daily. So shout out to you.
Don't forget the atheists who are also in the comments sometimes.
Yes, members of no faiths that are, they have faith in different things.
Yeah.
Atheism is interesting.
I know, but it's awesome that you're here, and hopefully we can help you believe in God. That's what we're here to do.
But we are not official representatives of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but we are joined in the studio not only by my co-host Brando.
What's up, guys? Really excited for today's episode.
Yeah, but an incredible guest, Lauren, and I totally just don't even know your last name.
That's okay, Lauren Willardson.
Lauren Willardson.
Yeah.
And she has an incredible story that she's going to be sharing with us. Before we get into it, we have an exciting piece of news for you that tomorrow, not only are we going to be able to hear from David Butler in our Old Testament lecture series, the Stick of Judah lecture series on Provo Center Street, but Mike Day is also going to be joining him as well to talk about that which is holy for archaeological finds that you won't hear about in Sunday school. So click the link in the description to reserve your spots, and we'd love to see you there. It's going to be a fun, informational night. But moving into our feature story, Brando, I intentionally know nothing about you or your story, okay?
Which is crazy because it was huge in the news.
Yes, I served my mission from 2018 to 2020.
Okay.
So I guess then I joined the Marine Corps shortly after, so I was separated from all things news.
You're cut.
But Brando, I guess give us a little intro of Lauren, and then I guess we just kick it over to her.
All right. Well, so you served from when to when?
I served from May of 2020 to May of 2022.
Okay, and this happened in 2020 in your training, right?
Correct.
Okay.
August 16th of 2020. I'd been out for about 10 weeks.
Okay, I had been out for about a year at that point, and so I heard about this story, and I want to just kind of set the stage for everyone, especially for Jackson, who just doesn't know what's going on here.
Yeah,
I think by the end of it, your jaw's just going to be on the floor, because this is such a powerful story. It changed my life personally, and I just first want to give a shout out to an amazing Latter-day Saint podcast out there called Authentic Gospel for Returned Missionaries. That is my beautiful wife Kayla's podcast that she hosts with my sister Mackenzie, and I'm feeling like a terrible husband all of a sudden because this is the first time I've ever mentioned it in a show with almost 200 episodes.
You've tried to. I prevented you. Kayla and I still have beef.
Right. So now I'm breaching the contract and shouting them out. But I wanted to talk about that for a second because you interviewed with them like a year ago, and that was because when Kayla came up with the idea for Authentic Gospel about a podcast for missionaries who have come home, and then also missionaries who are going out on the mission, the first person that came to my mind that I said she needed to interview was you. It was Lauren Willardson. And so I'm glad you did that, and I want you guys to go check out that video because you'll get different things out of it than you will in this video. But just to kind of give a little bit of context, and then you can tell your story because I know the audience is on the edge of their seat right now. When I was serving and I heard about this, it wasn't what actually happened to you that stuck with me and stuck with thousands and thousands of other people across the world. It was how you responded to the situation and the description of the events that you gave that news publications didn't include. Because obviously it's coming from you. It's a faithful perspective, and you're going to be, and you talk about, divine protection and things like that, and some of the other miracles associated with this event, this terrible, terrifying event that you turned into a tool for good to continue your missionary work after your mission. And it has impacted so many people around the world. It's affected a lot of us deeply. And later in this episode, I'm going to share your viral Facebook post that kind of encapsulates the testimony that I'm sure you're going to share with us here today. But the way you worded that was worded in such a way that only someone who had gone through what you had gone through would be able to word it the way that you did. And it's extremely powerful. It changed the way I think about my relationship with the Savior, about sacrifice and suffering, and about what it actually means to give your life to God, not just when doing so is easy, but when that commitment to Christ costs you something. And so I hope that introduction kind of does your story a little bit of justice, because I want the viewers to get the same thing out of it that I did, and I know a ton of missionaries in my mission did. You became a legend to missionaries across the globe. So please, without further ado, take us on this crazy story journey that you went through on your mission.
Yeah, Lauren, where are you from?
I'm from Draper, Utah.
What high school did you go
Basic.
to?
I went to American Heritage School in American Fork.
Okay, so you're not a Corner Canyon.
Not a Corner Canyon.
Good.
My siblings were, yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
your siblings
Yes,
were.
but-
So.
Still drove Lambos to school and all that. Just kidding. But yeah, take us through this, getting your mission call and then up to what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Brandon, for that incredible intro. I was like, I'm speechless now, trying to share my stories. Maybe a bad way to start, but that was so generous and kind of you. I am just so touched every time I get to share my story, because that's the whole reason I went through what I went through. The whole reason why I wanted to survive, was so I could continue testifying of Jesus Christ. So hearing that it's been able to make an impact like that just means everything to me. So thank you.
Of course, yeah. And I know you have pictures that you want to show throughout this, so just tell me and I'll pull them up when you want them to be pulled up.
Perfect. I'll try and remember.
But go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. So, like I said, I'm originally from Draper, Utah, and going on a mission was always the goal for me. I feel like a lot of people, especially sisters, might not have that same goal or objective, but I always, wanted to serve a mission. It was always a plan. My dad was really good, raising us to do the family home evenings and all those different things where you practice knocking doors. And I was the first kid in my family to serve. So when the time came for me to get my call, I was at BYU. It was my freshman year. And I was so excited. I had just, kind of done everything that I could to be as ready as I possibly could be, studying, preach my gospel, all of these things. And I really wanted to go somewhere foreign. I remember I really wanted to have like a hard mission where I felt like I laid it all on the line for God.
And that could only happen outside
in a foreign mission. Right. I was like, we want like Bolivia. We want like, I don't know.
I want dirt floors.
Exactly.
But that's also just like an awesome preconceived or just an approach to going on a mission, is that you want it to be hard. I don't think most missionaries going on a mission would say that. Yeah. So that's already a really faithful approach to your mission.
Thank you. That's kind of you. Yeah. Well, I was really hoping that would be the case. I was praying every day that they would be inspired to call me to like some epic, location where I could lay it all on the line. And I remember as we started getting closer to the day when a mission call would get there, because, you have like 2 or 3 weeks or so after you submit your papers, I started having feelings that maybe I should be okay with going stateside. And that was something that was really hard for me, but I just started praying that I would be okay with that, and opening my heart to it. And then I opened my mission call with my family, and I was called to Houston, Texas. And everyone instantly was so scared that I was going to be disappointed, because they knew like how desperately I wanted to go somewhere crazy. And I wasn't disappointed at all. I just remember as soon as I opened it, I saw it, and I just had the most overwhelming peace that was exactly where I was supposed to go.
Yeah.
I was going to be okay, which is crazy, understanding what happened to me later and how short of a time I was there. So I got my call to Houston, Texas, and that was in March of 2020. And just a couple of weeks later, COVID hit the world and everything shut down. And I think that's a really important part of the story too, is because there were multiple times when I could have not gone on my mission, right? When COVID happened, they said everyone can defer for 18 to 24 months. And not to spend too much time on this, but I went to the temple a lot and received a lot of revelation that I still needed to go now, even if it was just to go to Houston and sit in my apartment. You know, that was what I thought was in store for me. And I still felt like I needed to go to Houston no matter what the world or the work was going to look like there.
Yeah.
And so I got ready to go on my mission. One of the miracles, which will make more sense later, happened before the attack even happened. That was my ability to get my endowment. I was originally going to get my endowment. It was scheduled for the Wednesday after all the temples shut down around the world.
Yeah.
Obviously, we didn't know that was going to happen at the time, but I had this prompting the Wednesday before. I was like, I really just need to get endowed now. I don't know why. I was almost getting angsty with my parents. I was like, I just need you to support me with this. My grandparents were all supposed to come in town the next week to go to the temple with me. And I was like, I just need to be endowed today.
Wow.
And so we went and I got endowed. And then 2 days later, they announced that all of the temples would be closing worldwide.
Dang.
And so I was,
Yeah.
that was crazy. So I was one of the only missionaries in my incoming group. I might have been the only one that was endowed and had my temple garments.
Wow.
Which proved to be so important for me later on.
That's an insane thought.
Yeah.
Man.
That is crazy. And I served in Portugal, and there was a lot of missionaries from other countries that went through the entire MTC and like even a couple months into their mission and hadn't been endowed yet.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I didn't realize that that's a thing.
Like I could have been, living on my mission and had this whole experience without the protection of my garments. And I like cringe to think what would have happened there. But anyway, so grateful for that. And then I ended up going to the MTC online. I was supposed to do Mexico MTC, but it was online. We were one of the first groups to go through the Mexico MTC. And then I was finally shipped out to Houston. So the whole theme of my mission before it even started was that it was not going the way that I planned. That God's plans for me were very different than what I had for myself from going to Houston. Serving during COVID, I had prepared to knock doors. I hadn't prepared to do Facebook finding. Yeah. So I think God was teaching me very early on that his plan for me was going to be very different than how I pictured my mission.
Oh, but that's the worst that it got, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Just Facebook finding, it was a big trial.
Dang.
Yeah. But then, so I'd been serving in my mission for about 10 weeks. I did my first transfer in one apartment, and then we were moved to a second apartment in a different area because we got a new mission president and everything was kind of getting shifted around with where the elders and sisters were living. And we'd been there only for about 2 weeks when it was nighttime, and I woke up in the middle of the night to a man standing in between me and my companion's bed where we were sleeping. Really? So our beds were pretty close next to each other. You barely was space to like kneel down in between our beds. And I just remember seeing this dark figure looming over her. And my very first thought was I just counted like the number of people that were in the room. I was like, so there's her and there's me and then there's this guy. It's like, okay, so he's not supposed to be here. And then my very next thought was like, man, I never wanted this to happen to me. Because my biggest fear growing up had been, someone breaking into your house. I feel like all kids have that fear. Yeah. But so he was there and he was kind of hitting my companion. She, I think, became very concussed early on because of how he was attacking her in her bed. And as soon as I registered that there was this man in our apartment, I started, just screaming. So that was the only thing I knew how to do. And then he turned on me and started attacking me in my bed. And I don't remember a lot of exactly what happened in my bed, but I know I was stabbed multiple times in my bed. I forgot to say he had a knife. That was an important detail. I was stabbed multiple times in my bed because when I saw the pictures later, my whole bed was bloody, and that's how I figured out that I was stabbed in bed.
And he knocked out your companion?
He didn't knock her out, but she was concussed. Okay. So he had been hitting her a lot in her bed. Oh my God. And then he came and started attacking me. And I just remember I bicycled my legs at him, kind of like you do with your siblings when you're trying to get them off of you. And I was like, this is my best defense tactic that I know. Yeah. And then that kind of sprawled into us getting out of bed and having this 15-minute fight with him.
15
around
minutes.
Our apartment. Yeah.
That's a long time.
All while you're bleeding from stab wounds and your adrenaline is so
adrenaline is insane. Yeah.
You didn't even know you had been stabbed multiple times.
Exactly. Yeah. So I didn't even, we'll get into, I guess, that in a second, but I didn't know that I had been stabbed, or if I'd been stabbed, I figured I had been. But it was mostly just us wrestling with him, trying to make sure that neither of us died and trying to get the knife, away from him. So it was like he would be preying on my companion. I would go and punch him to get him off of her. And then he would come on me and she would kind of come aggravate him to get him off of me. And we kind of tossed him, back and forth, just struggling in the dark because we couldn't see how big he was. We didn't know who he was. It was just this looming dark figure that was, honestly trying to kill us. And there were so many different points of that, I guess, that I remember and that I could share. One of the greatest blessings that I attribute honestly to the word of wisdom is that I remember pretty much everything that happened through the whole attack, through like going to the hospital, everything. And so I have clear enough memories that I'm able to share and testify about it.
And you attribute that to the word of wisdom?
I do.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
In the Doctrine and
Sound
Covenants,
mind.
when it says you'll run and not be weary and walk and not faint, my greatest fear, I kept telling the nurses and stuff when they came, that I was like, I'm afraid I'm going to faint. I'm going to pass out. And I never fainted. I never ran out of energy to fight. And so, so we were just fighting him back and forth. And one of the biggest moments for me that I remember was at one point I went and I punched him really hard. And I always say I was really proud of it because I'd always wanted to punch someone, in the face. You don't get that opportunity often.
I'm still waiting for that.
So so I got to throw a good punch. Then he came on me and he pinned me to the ground. So his full body was on top of me. And I was like, this is it. Like, I can't get up. He's bigger than me. He's stronger than me. I thought it was over. And I remember my companion went over to the side of our room and I yelled after her. I was like, where are you going? Why are you leaving here? Like, this is going to be the end for me. And she just yelled back, I'm going to go pray. But she had remembered like the day or two before we were reading in our missionary handbook and we read what to do if you were like in an attack or an assault situation. And we had kind of joked because it said you may choose to defend yourself by like kicking, biting, screaming, hitting, or praying. It was like the last one that it listed. And those words came into her mind in that moment. And so she went to go kneel down and say a prayer. And I was like, that's genius. Why didn't I think of that? And so this man was on top of me and I just started screaming prayers at the top of my lungs. And it wasn't, like an in-depth prayer. It was really just screaming Heavenly Father's name. Like, that was my entire prayer. It was just that he would see us, that he would hear us, that he would be aware of us, and that somehow he would make, us be all right and stay alive. And so in that moment, I feel like our attack changed. Not that, instantly a bolt of light came down and struck our attacker, but I felt that everything was going to be okay. And I felt the inspiration that I needed to get my hand on the knife or we weren't going to make it out alive that night. And so we continued struggling for a little bit. And I don't remember how it happened, but I ended up standing facing my attacker and we both had our hand on the handle of the knife. So we were standing together by the door and we were holding it kind of here above my head. And he was trying to push the knife down into my head and I was trying to push it up, away from my head. And it was the first time that I had kind of seen him and recognized that he was relatively young. He wasn't quite as strong as I thought. And you would think that you'd feel really weak in that moment. I was bleeding just everywhere, all around the floor around me, kind of gory, sorry. But that's what was happening. And I thought, in this moment, I could meet my maker. If this knife, if he gets a burst of energy and the knife goes through my head, like, I'm done. And I could see God in heaven so clearly before me, like it was so close. But I didn't feel weak at all. I didn't feel anything but power. Like, I really felt the power of angels standing with me. And I felt so confident. I just told him, give us the knife. You've done enough. Like, give it to me. And just kind of felt like I was taking control of the situation. And I also felt, that if I died, that it was going to be okay. I mentioned this on the Authentic Gospel, but I was like, if I stay alive now, that's great. If I die, I know I've done everything that I can. I've served as hard as I could these first 10 weeks of my mission, and I know that I'm going to go and meet God in heaven. And either way, it's wonderful and it's great. Luckily, it wasn't my time to die. And we were able to kind of pull the knife away, and I fell to the floor. And my companion was there next to me. We were just on the floor. And this is the first time we'd kind of looked around and seen the apartment. You could see blood just everywhere. It's
Can't
like
even
those escape
imagine
rooms. Yeah.
The scene.
It was just on the walls, on the carpet, just so much blood. And we just noticed for the first time how much damage he'd really done. And we just begged him to leave in English and in Spanish. We're just, please, just go. You've done enough. And I'll never forget, me and my companion still talk about this, but his face had been so scary and ferocious before. He'd been screaming, making incoherent, like, scary noises, and his face just completely wiped. And he looked scared and he looked confused, and I felt bad for him. I felt really bad for him because I realized in that moment he was going to have to live with what he'd done for the rest of his life, and he realized that too. And we watched him realize that. And he turned around, he let himself out the door, and he left.
Just in the middle of fighting, and then
yeah.
Was there something, so you guys started asking him specifically to leave, or did you change up what you were saying and then he realized?
No, it was like we hadn't been able to speak or interact with him previously because he'd just been so ferocious. It was just,
Yeah.
a battle just to escape, just to get away, just to stay alive,
Yeah.
and not be where the knife was at any given moment.
Yeah.
And then as soon as we were able to kind of grab the knife and kind of rip it away and fall down on the ground, we just had this encounter with him where he looked at us and saw what he'd done, and we looked at him and we were just like, what else do you want from us? We had nothing left to give him. We were there dying, and he just, like I said, his countenance just completely wiped, and he let himself out and he left. And that was when we called 911.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So
Just gets my blood pumping every time I hear it.
yeah.
Dude, just a couple more clarifying questions.
Yeah.
So your companion, had she also been wounded with the knife at this point?
Yeah, so we were both stabbed multiple times. I don't know for sure how many times she was stabbed, but she was stabbed multiple times, and I was stabbed 9 times. So I was stabbed from my shoulder here into my chest, and it made both of my lungs collapse in 2 spots. And I was stabbed in my elbow. I was stabbed through my hand, so I have scars on both sides of my hand.
And we're going to talk about that.
Which will,
specifically
get
in a
into
second.
that. And then I was stabbed in my intestines. I was stabbed twice in my thigh, and then I was stabbed all the way through the bottom of my calf. So I have scars on either side of my calf at the bottom.
So then when you finally get to the emergency room, like, were they hopeful that you were going to make it, or did you really feel after the attack happened, did the adrenaline kind of wear off, and did you feel like, wow, I
Yeah.
still might be on the brink of life?
Oh, I absolutely thought I was going to die. Like, I don't want to say I was convinced, but there was a definite possibility. Like, you were hopeful, but I, like, multiple times was scared that it was the end for me. So after our attacker left, I remember my companion got up and she went in the other room to try and grab our phone with the SIM card. If you're a missionary, only one of the phones has a SIM card, and my phone had the SIM card. So she went and she found my phone and got my SIM card phone to try and call 911. And I remember that was the first time I started taking an account of what had happened and how bad it really was. I saw my shoulder was just like gaping open, the side of my arm, and I saw my leg was like gaping open at the bottom. And like Brandon mentioned, one of my favorite scars or stories that I tell is that I looked down and I noticed I was stabbed through the middle of my hand. And that was the first time I felt a little bit of comfort in the attack because it reminded me of the scars of Jesus Christ. Obviously, I always hesitate to make any sort of comparison because his are so infinitely greater than mine. But it was almost like he put it there as a message to me that he had been here first, that he had experienced exactly what I was going through, and that he was there with us. It was like his little message to me that I've got you and that I'm here for you and that I see you. And so I knew that we were going to be okay. Like I said, I didn't know what okay was going to look like. Okay, still could have been dying, but I knew that he was aware of us and he was going to make everything for our good. So then my companion called 911 and I tried to go and kind of rinse my wounds off and bandage them with toilet paper, which was the best I knew how to do.
Gosh.
Didn't work very well. And then I just kind of sat down, I laid against the wall, and that was when the adrenaline stopped.
Oh.
And I started losing feeling all through the left side of my body. All my wounds are on the left side of my body, which is another miracle because I'm right-handed. But yeah, I just lost all the feeling, and I was convinced they were going to have to amputate like my arms and my legs when they got there. We had kind of a hard time getting the ambulance to get there. We had to give them a lot of information before they came, and it was really kind of stressful to think that I could die before they got here. But they finally showed up and were able to get us out, get us in the ambulance. The police were able to secure the area, all the things, because they were still out, looking for our attacker at this point. And we didn't know if he was going to come back and sort of finish the job type of a thing. Then they got us in the ambulance, and that was where I found out how many times I was actually stabbed, because I told them, I was like, guys, I've only been stabbed 3 times. It's my hand, it's my shoulder, it's my leg. And I remember they just were flipping me over, and they're like, here's another one, and they were just doing tally marks and just counting every single one.
And did you feel like a difficulty to breathe at this point because of your collapsed lung?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I did, but it was just, there was so much going on that I didn't even know where the pain was coming from. People ask, like, oh, did it hurt when you were stabbed? It's like, yes. Like, I can't even describe the amount of pain that I was in, and I don't think I'll ever feel that much pain ever again. But it was like, as soon as we got in the ambulance, they wanted to put me on morphine like instantly. And I told them, I was like, no, this was me and my missionary brain, but I told them I've never had tea or coffee. Like, I don't drink alcohol. Like, I don't do drugs. Like, I don't
I
want
definitely don't take morphine once I've been stabbed 9 times.
Exactly. And they're like, no, you're taking this. Yeah, it was pretty funny. I think they had a good laugh or were concerned for my like mental stability. I don't know which one.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so even that, but then I got to the hospital and I was still complaining how much pain I was in. And they're like, didn't they give you something a long time ago? I was like, yeah, they gave me morphine like an hour ago. And they're like, and you're still in this much pain? And they shot me up with a bunch more stuff that we won't get into on the podcast. But it was a lot of pain, suffice it to say.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
And so they immediately just sew you up. And when did you figure out, okay, I'm going to be able to keep my limbs? Did that give you any comfort? Or did they immediately like operate on you and put you under?
Yeah, so there were a lot of different things that went down when we first got there. I thought the only problem with me is that I was bleeding. I thought my biggest fear was bleeding out. And so I was like, surely they're just going to take me there, stitch me up. I'll be back to my area, in a couple of days. No big deal. Yeah. Again, that was my ignorance.
Facebook finding tomorrow. Sister, I'm sorry. Wait, yeah. So with her wounds, like how many times was she stabbed?
I don't know exactly how many times she was stabbed, so I don't want to speak for her.
Okay.
But I know that he stabbed her like multiple different places, kind of similar to me. She also had a collapsed lung.
Yeah.
And things like that. And we had suffered from a lot of similar wounds. They put us both in this area by the ambulances and started working on us. And I was really frustrated because they weren't stitching up my wounds right away. But turns out they were working on more important things like my collapsed lung.
Yes.
They were putting in different tubes and things so I could breathe. And then also my stab wound in my intestines apparently was going to be lethal. And so I guess before I get to that, I want to share just one thing. When they were putting in my chest tube, I remember I had this weird kind of out-of-body experience with my medicine. And I couldn't remember who I was or where I was. But then when I came back to myself, I had like this very clear thought of like, what if I went on my mission just so I could be here in the hospital right now? Like what if there's someone that needed to hear the gospel, maybe a nurse or someone, and the only way that they could be reached was through me being in the emergency room right now. And that was my honest thought. And so as I'm laying there, I just start trying to tell them, about the plan of salvation. I start trying to tell them about the atonement and forgiveness and grace and all these different things. And I honestly think they're like, oh, like that's so cute, so sweet. It was maybe not having the effect that I thought it would, as this like powerful grainy missionary. I'm like, yes, they're going to be so persuaded. But for me, I think is where the value came because it gave me purpose. When I was testifying to them that I knew that Christ lived, that I knew he had a plan for me, that I knew that Christ atoned both for me and for our attacker, and that I was able to forgive him. Those truths helped give me a reason to continue fighting, and gave me the energy to survive through what happened next, which was my surgery. So they took me into another room and they told me, you've been stabbed through your intestines. We need to have surgery to repair it because there was all sorts of dangerous stuff going on. And they told me that there was a chance I could die in the surgery, but that I would definitely die if I didn't have the surgery.
Oh my God.
And I didn't.
And they told you that before?
Yes, they told me that beforehand. I didn't like any of those options. And so I asked if I could get a second opinion. And they said, you can, but if we transfer you to the next closest hospital, you'll probably be dead by the time you get there.
Oh my gosh.
And so I didn't.
And you're
like
an 18-year-old,
19-year-old girl.
19-year-old
yeah.
girl.
Mm-hmm. Been on my mission for 10 weeks.
Essentially by yourself.
Yeah, all by myself. My companion was separated from me at this point.
And is she having to make similar decisions, or were her wounds?
She didn't have to have surgery, which was really good. Yeah, so they were able to help her with her wounds, and then I think she went into like another room off of the ER while I was in surgery. But yeah, so I decided to call my parents. And I guess I should say before this, I'd called my mission president. Was the very first call that I made when I was in that first area, and they were just kind of doing the initial pre-work. I called my mission president, and the poor guy had only been out for like 3 or 4 weeks at this point. Oh, brand new mission president.
Where was he from?
It might have been less. He was from Arizona.
Okay.
He was from Arizona. I mean, originally I think he's from Mexico, but he was living in Arizona.
Okay.
Came to be our mission president. He'd only been there for a couple of weeks. And I called him and he said, Hermana, like, what's wrong? And I was just like, President, this is what happened. We've been stabbed. We're in the hospital. And he said, what hospital are you in? And I was like, I don't know, but they're about to like do a procedure on me. I gotta go. And I just hung up on him.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
I can't even imagine.
Ran through his body, the fear.
I know.
Oh my goodness.
Just absolutely terrible.
So yeah, before we get back to that, how did he eventually figure out?
Yes. Yeah. So I forgot to share this part, but so he miraculously again had been up earlier than normal this Sunday. This was a Sunday morning. The attack happened at 4 a.m. I called him probably around 7 or 8. Him and his wife were already up and ready and dressed for the day. And they said that they just said a prayer and they got in the car and they just started driving to try and find, where they thought we might be. And then I was able eventually, a little while later, to ask one of the nurses what hospital I was in. And I didn't even have the energy to barely pick up my phone at this point. I was so weak. And so I couldn't find his contact, anything. But as soon as I had called him originally, he had, everyone started texting me, all of our missionaries in our district, our stake president, our bishop, everyone was like, where are you? Are you okay? Are you okay? And I just clicked on the very first text message that I found and just sent the name of the hospital. And that was it. That was my plea to the universe that somehow it would find its way back to.
And this was before you being operated on?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So this was back in the original kind of pre-operating area. But then apparently I'd sent it to our stake president. I didn't even know who I sent it to. Never met the man before. But I sent it to our stake president. He was able to give the information to our mission president.
Wow.
And then he was right outside the hospital down the street when he got the information.
Wow.
Because they just started driving.
Uh-huh.
And so then he was able to come in and help me. He got there at about the point when I was about to go into surgery, and they were trying to get me to sign the papers to sign my life away so they could do the surgery on me. And I told them I'm not signing these papers till my mission president comes and gives me a blessing.
Oh my God.
And they're like, you're being stupid, don't be so, arrogant, all these different things. You need to have the surgery and time is of the essence. And the longer you wait, the more dangerous this could be for you. But I'd called my parents and told them what happened, and they agreed, wait for your mission president. And so it was a miracle because right as they were about to literally override the papers and be like, she's not sane enough to make this decision, we're just taking her anyway. Right at that moment, my mission president walked in and was able to give me a priesthood blessing before I went into surgery.
And let me just show the audience this picture of Lauren. And this is your mission president?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the mission president and his cute wife.
This is after your surgery?
Yeah, this was on the day that I was discharged from the hospital, this picture.
And how many days were you there?
I was there for 8 days.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
yeah.
Show some more pictures
as well. Hospital.
Talking
Yeah, that's
about
my
it. If
trauma
this is a good time to...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I was there for 8 days. The first couple days, I was pretty out of it. And then I had to relearn how to do everything because my intestines were operated on. I had to relearn how to eat again. I couldn't eat or drink anything for 6 days in the hospital. I had to relearn how to breathe because of my collapsed lungs. I had to relearn how to sit up. I had to relearn how to walk. That's me relearning how to walk right there. You can see the pillow was used to kind of keep my intestines together from the surgery.
Oh my gosh.
And then my arm and my shoulder were all just completely locked down. I couldn't move or use them at all. And that's why they're in that big cast.
So, how long was the surgery? And when you woke up, did you I guess I survived?
Yeah. So I went into surgery and again, everyone was just so nice and accommodating to me. I asked my nurses and everyone in the ER if we could say a prayer together before the surgery, and they were so kind and let me say a prayer. And then as soon as I finished the prayer, they put me under, and that was the first time that I was unconscious or don't remember something. They operated, goodness, I want to say it was close to 8 hours. So my parents, in the time I was in surgery, left my house, left my siblings and everything, got on a plane, flew to Houston. And we're there. And again, another miracle is the president of our hospital, the CEO, was LDS in the middle of Texas, which was important because during this time it was COVID, right? Everything was on lockdown and no family members or visitors were allowed into the hospital. But because our hospital CEO knew what had happened, he'd seen it on the news, and he knew what this would mean for my parents. He was able to let them and my companion's parents come
That's
in
insane.
to see us. Yeah.
That's just one of those tender mercies, miracles that the Lord...
Who would think this random hospital, and they could have taken me to any number. They didn't take me to the closest hospital to my apartment. They took me to a farther away hospital that had a better trauma unit.
Oh, okay.
And so it was just they specifically chose this hospital, not knowing the president of that hospital was going to be LDS and would be able to help us. And so when I woke up out of surgery, that president was actually right next to my bed, and he told my parents I will watch over her until you get here. And he was so nice and funny. I was in my hospital bed, just fresh out of surgery, and he's telling me stories from his mission in South America. We're speaking Spanish, all the things. And yeah. And then after that happened and my parents got there, I was kind of out of it for the first couple days recovering. And then I slowly came to, and that was kind of when I realized I have 13 total scars. And so I have really large scars from surgery. And I didn't realize they were going to make more wounds than I'd already had. I thought they were going to stitch with the ones I had.
Yeah.
And so I woke up and just realized I had, I think it was 89 staples all over my body, holding everything together. And yeah, just began that really long process for just the next 8 days for me to recover, relearn kind of some basic functions and become stable enough. And then we couldn't fly because I'd been stabbed, and my lungs had collapsed, and flying would make my lungs implode. And so we had to drive back from Texas up through Oklahoma, Nebraska, through Colorado.
How was
and
that?
back to Utah.
How was the drive? Was it okay? Like, were you?
Yeah.
Was it rough because it was so long? I mean, I don't know.
It was rough, mostly because I couldn't sit up. And so they laid me across the back seats of our car, and I had zero ab muscles because I have a 6-inch incision down the middle of my stomach.
So you couldn't
Flexing
sit up?
any muscle.
No, I couldn't sit up. So they just stuffed pillows in the side of the car to keep me stable in case we turned and things, so I didn't fall down in the seats.
And you were just back
drove.
there Facebook finding, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah. Responding to all my messages. Oh, and that was the other thing, is I never realized that I was going to have to go home. Like I said, I still thought even after my parents showed up that I was just going to, go back to my area at the end of it.
Yeah.
So when they got there, they always teased me, but I was really not happy to see them when they got there. I was like, what are you doing? This is the middle of my mission. I don't want to see you for 18 months. I've dreamed what the day at the airport is going to look like. Why are you here? And it took them, sitting me down and telling me, Lauren, you can't eat. You can't sit up. You can't walk. You can't get yourself to the bathroom. All these different things. No companion signed up to be your caretaker. You actually be inhibiting the work if you stay rather than helping the work. And I think it was hearing that made me realize, okay, I do need to go home for a minute and recover. But as soon as I went home, my goal was just to come back out as fast as I could.
Yeah. And can I just say, hearing you explain your thought process when you were in your most dire need of care and treatment, that you're thinking, maybe this is the thing that I was sent out here to share the gospel with someone that's going to be caring for me. I hear all the time from, people that aren't too kind to the church that, the LDS church just sends out these kids that know basically nothing, and they're not theologians, and what are they even thinking sending these kids out here that don't have these theology degrees? And I just think of the scripture. It talks about how the simple things of the world will confound the wise, and how you just having your conviction that Jesus is the Christ and that he is your savior, and just testifying simply of that fact is ultimately, on my mission, what I saw make the biggest difference to influence someone to have an experience with God for themselves. Because that's ultimately what our purpose is to help part the veil so that someone can have an experience with God.
I love that.
And so hearing your thought process in that time, is just such a testimony to me. It's as long as you have a testimony of Jesus Christ, go and testify of that.
Amen.
Yes, it's good to know about, how to explain the gospel, how to respond to people's doubts, but ultimately have the faith of a Sister Willardson, and you'll be just fine.
Yeah.
You'll be just fine.
And to add on to what Jackson is saying, that's what true conversion is. I think it's pretty rare, probably, to have an apostolic caliber of missionary like the way you just described yourself. You weren't doing it arrogantly, but describing your thought process of thinking about, I got to get back out to the work as you're sitting there in your wounds, potentially going to die. And you're so outside of yourself that you want to go back and keep preaching the gospel to the children of God. That is an apostolic caliber of missionary that I think every missionary needs to strive to be. And you get there through true conversion to Jesus Christ. Because once you become truly converted to Jesus Christ, you're outside of yourself. You are an instrument in his hands, and you can only think about him and your love for him and wanting to submit your will to his. And that's what the most staggering part about this is, that especially, and you're probably going to talk about this, spoiler alert, you went back out on your mission and finished your mission.
My gosh.
After such a traumatic ordeal. And I think there's many missionaries who are truly converted and who would strive to go back out. But I think there's also a lot who would say, I'm done after something like that. And everyone's in their own specific situation.
Yeah.
But you doing that is such a powerful example of knowing that your covenants and your protection from God and your love for him are all that matter, and that's what's going to take you the farthest, and you just want to keep giving him your will and your heart. And that's what you did by going back out and finishing your mission. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about that, or if there's anything else you have to say too.
Well, yeah, no, I'm sure you both have heard, like, you know, people that haven't served missions yet. A lot of people have the worry, I feel like I don't know enough, right? But just having that conviction that Jesus is the Christ, start with that, and then you'll learn. But walk us through this recovery process. When you get home, are you even more frustrated, or once you hear, okay, I need to get better, I'm going to be inhibiting the work until I get healed?
Right.
Help us understand what that was like.
Well, I'm glad you asked. It's kind of exciting for me. I told Brandon, but today is actually the 6-year anniversary from when I got home from that drive. Yeah.
Oh, today is.
So 6 years ago today, I got home from, and it was a Wednesday too. 6 years ago today, got home, and everyone was there to kind of receive me. All my family and friends, they did a really cute little parade around my neighborhood and put up the yellow ribbons and everything. So I was very, very lucky. But then when I got home later that night, my stake president and the whole stake presidency came over and they released me as a missionary. And I had to take off my mission tag. And that was so, like you can see right now, I'm kind of crying thinking about it. But it was so heartbreaking for me because I wasn't even able to wear my missionary tag in the hospital. I wanted to, but I couldn't because it messed up with, like, the magnetism would mess with all of my receptors and different things I had going on. But as soon as I could, when I left the hospital and took off my gown, I put that missionary tag back on and I wore it the whole way home. And then having to take it off for a time made me want even more just to go back as fast as I could. Mostly because, I mean, a couple of reasons. First, I've been preparing for this my whole life. You know, I hadn't gotten to teach, I hadn't gotten to test, I hadn't gotten to do all the things I'd prepared to do. And I didn't want Satan to be the one who decided when I was done.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, I am going to go back because I want to, but even if just for spite to say, Satan, you thought you could, but you can't. You know, and God is greater, and he put me here to testify, and by golly, I'm going to go back and I'm going to serve my mission, and I'm going to find, teach, and baptize people. And so I got home again on August, what day is today, 26th? I got home on August 26th, and my goal was to be back on my mission by Halloween. So think about how long it is from now to Halloween. That was how much time I gave myself.
And
to recover.
Had they given you a window of, like...
No, this was before I even saw any, like, physical therapists or any sort of doctor. So I was only in the hospital intensively for 8 days. But then when I got home, I did a lot of outpatient stuff. You know, I had a lot of nerve damage because my stab wound here broke through my brachial plexus, where all your nerves kind of come together. And so I had tons of parts of my nerves that weren't working that I had to regrow and repair. And again, I had to relearn how to do all the basic functions of life. I couldn't do stairs. I couldn't walk. I could barely eat still. All these things. I remember I would go to the grocery store and I had this, like, whole big walker with my mom, and I'd have old men with canes trying to, like, make laps around me, you know, because they thought it was funny. They didn't want to, like, race me. And that was just the condition that I was in. But then when I've been home for maybe a couple of weeks, again, another miracle, we were able to get into, like, the best physical therapy in the state of Utah. Wow. It was amazing. They had a spot open up. They were able to get me in, and my physical therapist was a stake president in Sandy. And so, again, he knew, like, how important this was to me. Yeah. And I told him, I was like, hey, do whatever you need to do. I want to be back out in 2 months. Like, that's it. And he didn't tell me at the time. He was like, okay, well, you know, we'll see what you can do. My medical records were about this thick. You know, he had to read, like, a book before I got there. And he didn't tell me this at the time, but on the day that I was discharged, he told me, you know, when you came in and said I want to be out in 2 months, I would have told you were crazy. Like, 1.5 years minimum just to get basic function back was what he was thinking.
But how did he respond when you said that?
He didn't tell me anything. He was just like, okay, great. You know, just trying to be positive. He's like, we'll see what we can do.
And then he's just like, oh.
Yeah, he's like, it's going to be at least 1.5 years before this girl even walks normally.
Wow.
But then literally by Halloween, I wasn't back on my mission because there was lots of complications with my call and a bunch of legal stuff that went in with getting me back out. But I was totally normal and functional again. I was hanging out with my friends. I was driving. I was doing all of the things. And
with pain or with...
No, pretty normally. I mean, was I like running a marathon? No. But like, could I walk around the mall, and do all those things?
Yeah.
And no one could tell what had happened to me.
No way.
Yeah.
So you didn't lose any sort of function in your leg, your hand, or...
Yeah, I mean, I did for a while. So for the first little bit, like I said, I was really struggling to walk. I would limp around. I had to use a cane. I had what's called frozen shoulder, so I couldn't raise my arm like any degree. It was just like stuck to my body because of my stab wounds there. And then all of the knuckles and everything in my hand were frozen too because of the stab wound through my hand. And so it was to the point where I hadn't moved my hand in so long that my knuckles like disappeared. Like it was just skin. I didn't know that was even possible. Like you couldn't even see my knuckles anymore because there was just no joints.
Oh, because I guess like the wrinkles in your hands are here because you're always
moving.
using it. But then it's just...
my hand was just frozen.
That's trippy.
Yeah. It was kind of scary. And so that was why I went to physical therapy, is they helped me like rework and be able to raise my arm, use my joints again. And I was pretty weak. I still did physical therapy even into going back on my mission to strengthen myself. But I had my basic functions back. The biggest thing that I had long-term was nerve damage, and I still have nerve damage to this day, both in my leg and in my arm, parts that I can't feel. Like my hand will spaz out sometimes when I'm holding something, things like that. But to have escaped, all of that with just a little bit of nerve damage, I count myself, very blessed.
Yeah, that's crazy. In terms of mobility, you're totally
fully
fine.
Mobile, yeah. I play softball in DC, and
really,
we just went to the finals. Yeah, I was the first and second baseman. Wow. So, yeah, like it's crazy.
Wait, so you said you weren't back on your mission before October, but when were you able to?
So I went back on my mission on January 26th.
Wow.
So 5 months to the day since I got home, I was back out. It was just 2 days.
You were so freaking excited.
I was so excited. It was hard because I thought it was going to be much sooner, and then we were kind of in this weird in-between period. And I had a lot of great experiences while I was home. I got to reconnect with people from my mission who would come home. I got to help, volunteer and do like Christmas baskets for our local hospital, which was really great and meaningful. We got to connect with some of our friends at Temple Square. I won't get into specifics there. We got to do a little like mission call with some of the church leaders for our missionaries back in Texas, where me and my companion went to Salt Lake and were able to do kind of like a Zoom devotional for them with some leaders in Salt Lake.
Because was your companion, was she from Utah or where was she?
She's from Arizona.
Okay.
She's from Arizona, but she was going to BYU, kind of all the things. So she was close and familiar with Utah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we had great experiences. But then, it was 2 days before Christmas. I was in Walmart and my bishop called me and he said, I got your call. Do you want to know where you're going? And I was like, Bishop, I'm not ready for this. Like, I'm in Walmart. I was like, give me 2 seconds. So I ran home, gathered all my family and stuff and got them together. And I called him back. I was like, okay, Bishop, I'm ready. It wasn't a normal call.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, you're going to Tempe, Arizona. And this time, I will say, for all my friends in Tempe, I love you, but I cried when I heard I was going to Tempe the first time because I'd really wanted to go back to Texas. I felt like that was my mission. That was a place that God had called me, and I was really sad to see that chapter was done. And a little part of me still hoped, I was like, maybe this time, I did the Houston thing, and now maybe God will send me to a really cool exotic place. I was like, maybe this was just a little precursor.
We're always we're like, okay, this is the plan that is gonna make me fulfill my purpose. God, like, just trust me this one time.
I did your thing, God. Like, come on, just give me one thing. Like, all I'm asking for is to go somewhere cool and exotic the second time.
But I'm sure you learned, though, why you were supposed to go to
oh, absolutely.
By the
absolutely.
End of it. And,
no.
So tell us a little bit more about like how that ultimately ended up being fulfilling to you in terms of your missionary service.
I always say that Texas was my mission for this experience. My mission in Texas was to have this attack, happen to me. And then my mission in Arizona was to be missionary, to find, teach, and baptize. And I had a great mission. I was really blessed that my mission president tried to make me as normal of a missionary as I could. It's hard when you had an experience like this that was so known. And I didn't mention this too, but when I was home during those 5 months, I was doing like podcasts, I was speaking at wards and stakes, I was doing news interviews, all these different types of things. And so it was very public. Yeah. And so then I made that viral Facebook post that Brandon talked about in September because there had been so many rumors and things going around. I was like, I just need to, say my piece and share my testimony of what happened. But then when I went back on my mission, all of those missionaries that were now in my district and my companions had heard about the story and knew who I was. Really? And were calling me out, in my training, all these different things, or in our zone conferences. And so it was weird to try and acclimate to be a normal missionary. My mission president did a great job of just letting me do what I came there to do. And like I did have to, do some physical therapy. I did struggle with some things physically. There were probably about 9 months of my mission where I couldn't really eat at all, which was a complication and another thing I guess we can get into.
Yeah.
That was from the stab wound in my intestines. There were some complications, and I just couldn't eat pretty much anything. I was going to members' houses for member dinners and going to the bathroom to like throw up during the dinner.
Oh.
Oh, so sorry.
Just over. It's okay. It was just one of those things where it's like I'm trying so hard to be a missionary.
Yeah.
And I was literally only in my new mission in Tempe for, goodness, probably like 2 months before I started having more complications. And I was having people from Salt Lake calling me, and checking in on me because they were hyper aware of me. My mission president had to like report to these people, about my health and stuff regularly. And it was really hard. And I remember at one point I went to the hospital. I was getting all these different tests done because I didn't know exactly what was wrong. And I kept getting all these tests done. And at one point they called me and told me a couple things that were wrong. And they told me that if I needed to have surgery on these, new complications, that I might have to go home again. And that was kind of when I lost it. I was like, Heavenly Father, I am trying so hard to be a missionary. All I've ever wanted was to be a missionary. I get stabbed, I go home, I recover, I come back out, I get sick again, and I actually might have to go home a second time. And I remember Heavenly Father's voice just came into my head. God's voice just told me, like, have you already forgotten what I've done for you? I took you from this, broken, almost dead little girl in Houston, Texas, and put you back to where you are now, where you're thriving, you're serving as a missionary in Arizona, you're living on your own, you're healthy. It's like, do you not believe that I can do that for you again? And then I repented because it's true. I was like, what, you're right. And it's your will and it's your mission. And if you want me to go home again, I'll go home again, and I'll come back out a second time, and I'll keep coming back out as many times as I need to finish my mission. And luckily, I didn't end up having to go home. They were able to put off the things that needed to be done until I finished my mission. But that was, I think, an important moment for me where I had to choose that I was okay going home a second time if that needed to be the case. But other than that, those, complications, I served a relatively normal mission. I was dealing with the district attorney in Houston for half of the time to try and figure out a trial for our attacker who they did.
So did
catch.
they found him?
Yeah.
How long after it happened?
Later that day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
thank goodness.
they found him, arrested him, and I found out because it was on the news when we were in the hospital.
Wow.
Like, my companion sent me the news clip. She's like, did you see it? And we actually knew the guy that attacked us.
What do you mean knew him?
So we didn't recognize him in the dark because he was wearing a mask and it was, dark and all these things. But he was one of our neighbors in the apartment complex. So we had street contacted his family. We'd given them a Book of Mormon. They had been really friendly to us. We'd seen he had like a 1-year-old daughter that we'd seen.
How old was this guy?
He was 17 at the time.
So he was a
attacked us.
juvenile. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Was he charged as a
He
juvenile?
was charged as an adult.
As an adult.
They say adult crimes, you get charged as an adult. And by the time we went to trial, which it was supposed to be twice during my mission, I was like prepared. They got it approved that I was going to fly back to Houston solo as a missionary, meet up with my trainer, who was now going to BYU. She was going to be my companion again, so to speak, and we were going to do the trial. That happened twice, and then at the last minute, his attorneys pulled out, and then they postponed the trial. And so I ended up going to trial in Houston about a month after I got home from my second mission in Arizona.
Yeah. And I know you came back to Authentic Gospel to give a lot more details about like the trial and facing him and stuff. I mean, just like, briefly, how was that for you having to face him after all that?
It was really incredible. I think encountering him in the actual trial was a minor part of that trip for me. Obviously, it was kind of scary to see him again. We had the whole trial. Me and my companion both had to testify, which was a little bit scary, with the judge and everything. It was the first time that I saw pictures from the room, the police footage, all these different things. So I got a lot of questions answered that I had been wrestling with for 2 years.
Yeah.
I was like, where did this happen? Like, like I said, was I stabbed in bed? Was I not? Then I saw the police photo. I was like, oh, I was definitely stabbed in bed. All these different things that helped answer some questions. But it was really just kind of full circle for us because at the end, when they gave him the sentence, he got 35 years and then he's going to be deported after that. But when they gave him the sentence, they asked, is there anything you want to say to them before we take you away, basically? And he turned around and he looked at me and my companion who were sitting in the pews, and my heart just like went through my toes. It's like your would-be murderer is just, looking at you and there's nothing he can do to you now, but still it's like just terrifying. But he just gave us the most heartfelt apology. He said that we were good girls, like he didn't know why he did it and he was so sorry. all these different things. And then we were able to give him like a little Book of Mormon that we'd wanted to give him before, and we did it like marked up with all of our scriptures about the atonement and grace and forgiveness and things. And then they took him away. But the more meaningful part of that trip for me was getting to reconnect with the people that saved me. I got to go back and I got to see my trauma surgeon. I got to see my nurses again. I got to meet my EMT crew through just miracles. I called them, and it had been 2 years. So I didn't even know how many of them were still working there. But I was like, hey, this is what happened. I'm in town for trial. I would love to, say thank you to some of these people that saved my life. And they were able to get together the people that had responded to me and saved me and found us in the apartment that day. And I was able to thank them. And then the biggest thing is I was able to go back to my apartment because I felt like that was something I needed to do to come.
Get some closure.
Full circle, to get that closure. And it was really interesting, walking down the same street, standing where I had been, rolled out on the stretcher, standing on my own 2 feet. And then I went back to our apartment and saw, where he'd broken in through like our little balcony patio thing. We had like a little sliding like plastic door. So I saw that again and just everything. And I thought that when I went back there, I would feel this anxiety and this fear, and stress that I had from that first night and that darkness, because really it's like I've never felt the presence of Satan more than I did that night, very tangibly. But then when I went back, it was almost like it was a sacred grove for me. It was like, this is where you came to know God, and all of that stress and anxiety that I looked for was completely gone and just wiped away by peace. And it was like a temple, like how strong I felt the Spirit when I went back there. It was really cool to have that kind of full circle experience. But yeah.
You've got Jackson speechless.
I cannot believe there's so many aspects of this that you like. That's one of the biggest miracles of the atonement for myself because of the small experiences that I've had of, being in a position where I need to forgive someone. Like, it is only the power of Jesus making you a new creature, where that you can look at that man and have pity on him and will his good. That is true love, willing another person's good and giving him the word of God, that hopefully in these next 35 years and beyond, that he may find some sort of redemption. Because I can't even imagine him going through the process of forgiving himself.
Yeah.
That's insane.
No, it's so crazy. And I'm glad you brought that up, because before I went back to Houston, I did an endowment session here in Provo before I went back. And I always go, with a question in mind, trying to look for a certain answer. And my question that time was just like, God, like, what do you want me to know going back to Houston? Like, what should I feel? How should I approach this? And I remember specifically, how the endowment talks about Adam and Eve, and their decisions in the Garden of Eden. And it had always impressed me that God wasn't so much angry at them as he was angry at Satan, for what happened in their choices there. And as I was watching that kind of go down and how God reacted to Adam and Eve, partaking of the fruit, I thought about our attacker, and the impression just came to me that Christ died just as much for him as he did for me. That Christ gave his life to redeem him from the guilt and from the regret and from the pain, as much as he did to save me from my wounds and help me return for my mission. And I was like, if God has already extended that grace to him and forgiven him, then who am I, to hold any anger against him? And I got to the point where it's like, I don't even necessarily feel like, for me, I want him to go to jail. I felt bad that he was going to jail. The only reason I felt like he needed to go to jail was because I didn't want him to hurt other people, and I think that's how God works with us too, with our consequences in life. It's like, he doesn't give us consequences because he wants us to hurt, he gives us consequences because he wants us to learn, so we don't further hurt ourselves or hurt other people, so we can develop. And that was kind of how I approached it. But I think that I don't know, that piece was something I was missing for a long time. That I was like, we're the ones that were good. We're the ones that were missionaries. We're doing the right thing. And he's the bad guy. It was like, no, like, Christ loves him and died for him just as much as he did for me.
Wow. Oh my God. Lauren, I'm just so awestruck by your gargantuan tree of personal faith in Jesus Christ. And I'm giving you a lot of high praise, because I think, like, when we had Eileen on and Wes on, and they told us their stories, we need to hear each other's stories of faith and encounters with the Savior, Jesus Christ, to help our own testimonies, because we'll have those experiences too. Maybe not to the level of being stabbed and having to go through an ordeal like that, but we can have just as close of a testimony of Jesus Christ, with or without having a scar on our hand that reminds us of him. But the fact that you do is something I just want to talk about for a second, because this was the most life-changing part of it for me when I read it. So much so that at the end of my mission, when I gave a talk in my ward, I actually shared this quote from your Facebook post in my talk, because I think every person should hear it. And you've already kind of testified of it on this podcast in your own words. But I just want to show side by side right here this picture of your hand.
That is so...
with the scar on it next to the Savior's hand. And what you had to say about that. And is it okay if I read just part of your post? So I'll just start here. As I sat there with my limbs tensing up to the point I could not move, not knowing if I was going to bleed to death, I remember looking down at my hand and seeing that it had been stabbed through the middle. While you may think that this would be an alarming sight to behold, I remember feeling the greatest peace as my mind instantly thought of a similar wound in the hands of one much greater than I. As more wounds were discovered on me in the ambulance and procedures following, I soon learned that my intestines had been pierced near my side and my ankle pierced through as well, right above my foot. With these 3 wounds, I have learned more about the atonement of Jesus Christ than I had ever understood previously. As I thought of his pierced hands and feet and side and felt the pain of my own wounds in similar spots, I finally understood a microscopic portion of just what Christ went through to save us. There are no words that can describe the amount of agony Christ chose to endure to save us. I do not possess the ability to describe what it feels like to have your hand stabbed through, the searing pain that follows wounds like these, or what it feels like to almost bleed to death. But because I have experienced these things, I now can say to all the world, never doubt how much Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ love you. I went through this because it just happened to me, but to think that Christ chose willingly to feel everything I felt, an eternity more, and eventually die just so he could be there for us, even when we sometimes choose to turn our back on him, I cannot help but exclaim like Pontius Pilate, "Behold the man." I testify that he suffered excruciatingly so that when you go through your own Gethsemane, you do not have to suffer. He will carry you when you cannot walk. He will take away the pain when you cannot bear it. He will bring you peace when hope seems lost. He will do this for you because this is what he has done for me. None of this is unique to me. He does it for all of us. I just had to have a little tougher experience to finally learn it, but I hope and pray that each of you will not have to do the same, that you will use my experience instead and learn it now. Please learn and never forget just how much your Savior loves you.
Oh, my goodness. You're incredible.
Christ is incredible.
Jesus is incredible. Oh my gosh.
So I guess one last question I have is, how has this testimony that you bore on this post, just like not much longer after that happened, how has that evolved in your life 6 years later? And what message would you give to anyone who is preparing to serve a mission?
Well, thank you so much for reading that. Like I said, that encapsulates all of my feelings of everything that I was thinking and feeling and going through. I had a lot of people asking me a lot of questions, and there were a lot of rumors that were going around about exactly what went down, and that's why I decided to make that post. But I never, ever realized how big of an impact it could have for good. I thought maybe my grandma and a couple of my neighbors would like it, and it blew up. It has given me all these opportunities to share and testify of Jesus Christ. But the message, the central message in there is my biggest testimony that I received from this attack. That's to never forget how much Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ love you. And it's powerful for me to think back on where I was when I wrote that, because obviously my life has changed since then. I'm just a regular, young adult now, doing the things that young adults in the church do. And that has been an anchor for me to remember the miracles that Christ did for me. I think we all have moments where we wonder, if we're enough, or if we're doing what God wants us to do, or if he is aware of us. And you would think that after such an experience that I've had, I couldn't wonder those same things, but I do. And I think we all do. And that's why I say that anyone that went through this, I think, would have reacted the same way I did. It wasn't unique to me. It's all the power of God that put me there, that made it happen to me and put me back on my own 2 feet. And my job now is to choose every single day to remember, to remember how much he loves me, to remember what he did for me. And that's why I love testifying, is because it brings it back to me. And an additional testimony I would say that I've added on to that one is that God's plan for us is rarely the plan that we have for ourselves, but it is always perfect. Nothing in my mission turned out the way that I had hoped. Everything about my mission was different than I had planned. But because of that, I can equally say that everything was better than I had hoped. I didn't get to go to some obscure mission. I didn't get to serve a normal mission. I barely knocked a single door. I was serving during COVID. I went home multiple times, all these different things. But because of that, I now have had a more wonderful life after my mission than I ever could have anticipated. I've learned more about the atonement of Jesus Christ than I ever could have in 18 months otherwise, and probably than a lot of people may learn in their entire lives, and I've been given opportunities to share and testify. It's changed the trajectory of my career. Everything about my life is different because everything about my mission wasn't what I wanted. And I think that that's a really important lesson for us as well, is that when things don't turn out, when we have dead ends, when we have unanswered prayers, it is always God working in our behalf, and it may be made manifest, the next day or a couple years down the road or multiple years down the road. But like I prayed at night, every night, that we be protected and that we be kept safe. And I think it's easy for someone to look at this experience and say, God didn't answer your prayers. He didn't hear you. And I would say, no, he did, because he did keep us safe. He did save our lives, and he answered my greater prayer that I prayed every night, which was that his work would be engraven on my hands and on my feet. And now I have that tangibly and the opportunity to testify of him physically, for the rest of my life.
Gosh, what do you say after that?
You read the scriptures. Can I read a scripture,
yes,
please?
Please.
Goodness gracious. It's in Moroni chapter 7, verse 35. It says, "And now, my beloved brethren, if this be the case, that these things are true, which I have spoken unto you, and God will show unto you with power and great glory at the last day that they are true. And if they are true, hath the day of miracles ceased? Or hath angels ceased to appear unto the children of men? Or hath he withheld the power of the Holy Ghost from them? Or will he so long as time shall last, or the earth shall stand, or there shall be one man upon the face thereof to be saved? Behold, I say unto you, nay. For it is by faith that miracles are wrought, and it is by faith that angels appear and minister unto men. Wherefore, if these things have ceased, woe be unto the children of men, for it is because of unbelief, and all is vain. For no man can be saved according to the words of Christ, save they shall have faith in his name. Wherefore, if these things have ceased, then has faith ceased also. And awful is the state of man, for they are as though there had not been redemption made." May we strive to have the faith as Lauren Willardson, okay? And yeah, incredible. And can I just say, all right, to me, that was as if you were sharing that experience for the first time. Wow. Incredible. I'm sure you've talked about this incessantly for the last 6 years. I'm sure. But the way that you just conveyed, that experience and your thoughts during it and your faith in the Lord was almost as if, I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have known. And so thank you so much for your continued faith. And this has been the most incredible hour of my,
dare I say, one of the best episodes of Latter Daily Saints. Got that burning in my bosom right now.
I don't even care if only one person watches this. This made my freaking year. This is incredible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for having me. It's been incredible.
Of course. Thank you for coming. Yeah, thank you.
I don't even know what more can be said. But so, I mean, is there... I don't know. Do you talk about these things, openly on your own type of platform, or where can people find you if they want to reach out?
Yeah, so I do actually share quite a bit. I have a platform on Instagram called The Work of His Hands.
Okay.
which I called it that. I launched it when I made that Facebook post that Brandon mentioned. That's when I started that page. And I've shared just different insights and miracles. I feel like I have so many things, like even more than what we've shared today, which is hard to believe because I've been rambling so much. But there are just so many, just infinite little miracles of what God did to save me that I really believe it was all just the work of his hands. And so I started that Instagram just to share more of the miracles. If people want to go there, I share things on there regularly. And I also get to go around and share it at firesides, different events often, which is what I love to do. I'm doing one tonight.
Awesome.
So I'm excited about that.
Here's that account right
The anniversary.
here.
Yeah.
Go follow it, give it some love so that you can be inspired as we were today.
Incredible. The work of his hands.
So that's where you can find me. But
Okay, cool. Lauren, you're incredible. Freaking awesome. You're so cool. All right. Well, until next time, and I mean it more than I've ever said it before, if you're not looking at the world through a restored gospel lens or through faith in Jesus Christ, you're only getting probably a lot less, but you're only getting about half the story. God bless you.